provocando o realizando movimientos, rotaciones en las carteras ante, bueno, pues estas consecuencias de una calma tensa en las negociaciones comerciales, una bronca muy pero que muy dura en el seno de la política estadounidense, y vamos a ver que si esto puede dejar algunos movimientos, algunas oportunidades, esta bronca entre Donald Trump e Elon Musk. Saludamos a nuestro siguiente invitado, a Kevin Thozet, miembro del comité de inversión de Carmignac. Hi Kevin, good morning.
Hi, morning.
Welcome to Negocios TV. First of all, I ask for a brief assessment or the latest disagreement or dialectical fight or dialectical dispute between Elon Musk and Donald Trump over the tax bill, project tax bill. Could the confrontation between these figures alter markets' sentiment or cause volatility in long term or in the technology sector?
Yeah, well, we're having the most powerful man in the world on the one hand and the richest man in the world in the left corner. Jokes aside, I mean, with regards to impact on financial markets, I'd say there are mainly two of them. One is on the political front. What it shows is the potential for fracture in the Republican camp in the US, and then the questions over the financing. I mean, if all the tech bros, as they're called, follow Mr. Musk, and these questions are being raised. Why? Because we will have mid-year elections in 1 year time. So that's one kind of renewed or even more political uncertainty, and we know that this can feed into volatility. The second one is more linked to the equity markets. Why that is? Because the valuation of Tesla is very, very high. We're talking about price-earnings ratios, which are 120. So basically 1 century of next year's earnings or Tesla earnings, that's the price you're paying for this. And why is this? This is not just because of the auto activity. If you're looking at BYD or Seat Volkswagen, they're being valued at what, 5 times, 20, 12, 16 times, so kind of, 10 times lower than Tesla. And why is this? It's because it's the robo-taxi, human robot, and it's related, I'd say, productivity gain, which are very, very high. And the prospects of this part of Tesla book being approved is decreasing. So there's a risk that the Tesla share fall, and this has an impact on the wealth effect, because Tesla is 1.5% of the S&P 500, is more than 2% of the Nasdaq, is 1% of the MSCI World. So we can have a negative impact on wealth effect as well.
Yesterday, ECB President Christine Lagarde, following new interest rate cuts, said that the end of the rate cuts appear to be coming to the end. Several members of the ECB today, Sturnaras, who believes the cycle of cuts is practically over. Villeroy says the battle against inflation has been won. Do you share this opinion? And is a pause at the ECB in order?
Yeah, so I mean, it's almost the anniversary of the beginning of the last cutting cycle, of this cutting cycle. It started 1 year ago, and fast forward, we have had 8 interest rates cuts. I'd say there are 2 things there. One is, there's some resistance. That's what she's been saying, and that what we hear from the Governance Council. So resistance to go lower or not go lower. Why? I take 2 main reasons. One is we are approaching the neutral range. So kind of neutral ECB rates between 1.75 and 2.25. It's a bit like when you're driving a car, when you're kind of approaching to the speed limit, you're not accelerating or decelerating as fast. So it's something like this. So that's one element. The second one is that, well, yes, they need time, and they need time to look at the data. So our expectations at Carmignac is that they will skip the July meeting, and after this, we will likely have 1 cut per meeting. Why is this? Because they have, I think, room to go further down, and the chief economist of the ECB, a fellow Irishman, Mr. Philip Lane, is saying that at 1.5%, interest rates or deposit rates of the ECB are still accommodative. So we tend to be kind of maintaining a positive view on European rates, but on the short-term part of the yield curve, because maybe markets have been a bit quick to say that this cutting cycle is being done.
This week, recent minutes from the Federal Reserve reveal concerns about the potential structural deterioration in asset values on Wall Street, suggesting that markets may own trade policies or may not have fully prices in the effects of trade policies and the loss of the international confidence. So, are we facing a persistent overvaluation of financial assets in the US, and what could this mean for global investors and economic stability?
Well, I mean, again, if we're looking at valuations, you're looking at, let's say, S&P 500, so largest US companies. On average, the price-earnings ratios for those equities are around 22 times. Yeah? If we're looking at kind of a long-term period, when you have had valuations, so price-earnings ratios at 22 times, on average, the average return, annual return you would get an investor is 0% over a 10-year period. That's what has happened historically. So yes, valuations do matter, even more so in a world where bond yields, sovereign yields, are higher than they were in the past. So that's, I'd say, one concern. And yes, US equities are much more expensive than that of the rest of the world, and they're still much more expensive than they have been historically. So that's one on the equity side.
Oh, okay.
Then, if I'm looking at other assets, I'm looking at bond markets, for instance. So we were discussing about Mr. Musk before. The Doge, as it says, well, the Doge barks more than it bites. The deficits in the US will remain significant. We continue to see fiscal largesse in America, and at the same time, we're seeing a loss of appetite for investors for long-term bonds. And that's true in the US, in Japan, and in Europe as well. So that's kind of the second one. And so when I combined all of this, there's clearly some concerns that foreign holders of US equities will hold less of US assets going forward. And amounts are huge. We're talking in Asia, so Asian countries hold 4 trillion of US assets, equities and bonds. In Europe, it's more than 10 trillion of US assets. And most of our assets in the US are not hedged. So my point there is that, yes, there's downside risk on the US dollar, and yes, there is the possibility that, in fact, well, other assets, Europe and emerging markets, which have been under-owned, under-loved, will gain tractions for investors. So what we do in portfolios is that we are reducing exposure to US equity markets, and we are increasing exposure to Europe and emerging markets. So basically, we're diversifying our exposure.
Finally, the market's focus is on this US employment data. What do you think about non-farm payrolls? The expectation is lower.
Yes. Yes, well, I mean, that also feeds into what I was saying before. So our expectation is that the non-farm payroll data will be lower than what is being penciled in by consensus. Why is this? Well, the US cycle is slowing down. I mean, in Europe, we are exiting a phase of stagnation. It's reaccelerating, and Spain is having quite some advance there. In America, it's the other way around. The cycle is, approaching to its end, and it's kind of slowing down. So that's, I'd say, one element. On top of which, we had earlier data on the jobs markets this week with the ADP. So that was yesterday, day before yesterday. ADP, which was, by the way, commented by Mr. Trump. I mean, Usually economists don't even comment on the ADP, so I find it quite puzzling or quite striking to see that the President of America is commenting this data. So yes, I think the US economy is increasingly slowing down, and what we expect at Carmignac is that, in fact, on average, over the second part of 2025, the US GDP should be trending at around 1%, so below potential. And this also, I think, feeds into this narrative and this positioning that we have, that we prefer assets in the rest of the world than assets in the US.
Kevin Thozet, miembro del comité de inversión de Carmignac, member of the Carmignac Investment Committee. Thank you for coming in Negocios TV.
Muchas gracias.
Y nosotros tenemos que hacer una pequeña parada y volvemos de inmediato con más noticias aquí en Ponte en Acción.